When a person displays an extreme swing from one mood to another, from like a manic mood to a depressive mood, they're often diagnosed as bipolar. But it's not just the people who are diagnosed as having bipolar disorder that have bipolar disorder. It's actually all of us. And to be more accurate, it's not really bipolar disorder. We all have tripolar disorder. So I'm going to talk today about something in Eastern mysticism and Eastern philosophy psychology called the gunas. And the gunas are these modes of nature that nature produces. So nature we have to think of, and this includes our bodies and our minds, are the original matrix. We can label the government and secret societies and the banking system and all of these things as the matrix, but they're actually produced from an already existing matrix, which is Mother Nature. And so these three qualities, this tripolar situation that we all live in, are called the gunas, and there are three of them. Rajas, which is the passionate energy. Tamas, on the other end of the spectrum, is the depression energy. And the energy of clarity and stability is called sattva. These are the Sanskrit words. So in English, we would identify passionate energy as excitement. Sometimes it manifests and feels like nervousness. Sometimes it feels like anxiety. There's many different forms of rajas and many different degrees to which we experience that passion. On the other end is tamas, which means depression. It really can mean more accurately and sort of more comprehensively as inertia. Laziness. We feel it when we feel lazy. We feel it when we feel sleepy. So all of us, not just the people diagnosed with bipolar disorder, sort of pendulum between these two ends of our mood system as it is produced by material nature. Now, in the middle here, we have sattva. And sattva is the mode of clarity, of equilibrium. I like the word equilibrium. And sattva isn't necessarily like in between these two or the middle of these two. It's really kind of above these two. All of these three are found in every single part of nature. Right down to every single cell in nature has these three potentials within it. But one of them is always dominant. One always dominates. So maybe you can identify them within yourself right now. Maybe you can sense out in your psyche some passionate energies. And maybe you can also sense out even, simultaneously that we sense the passion, we can sense depression. And we can also sense within us a peacefulness, a balance, an equilibrium. So in the Bhagavad Gita, and this is the Bhagavad Gita that I recommend, especially if you haven't studied the Gita before, and you want a really in-depth, comprehensive understanding of the Gita, this is a great one. Bhagavad Gita Explained, translated by Michael Beloved. So it is in chapter 14 that we find the discourse about the gunas given by Lord Krishna. He says clarity, impulsion, and retardation are the influences produced of material nature. They captivate the imperishable embodied soul in the body. So this is a really important statement. Krishna is saying that these influences produced by nature captivate the imperishable spiritual self, the embodied soul. So if you can imagine that you are a soul, and that soul is positioned in the center of the head space, where we feel kind of a convergence of identity and a centering of consciousness in the middle of the head. And you can fathom the possibility that there is a self there. That observing self, the self that's observing this world, not necessarily part of this world, in the world, but not necessarily an exclusive part of this world, as it observes this nature and it experiences through the body-mind vehicle these gunas, it becomes captivated. It becomes hypnotized. It over-identifies itself with these gunas, with these modes of nature, and mistakes itself for them, thinks that it is them. Krishna goes on to say, regarding these influences, the clarifying one is relatively free from perceptive impurities. It is illuminating and free from disease, but by granting an attachment to happiness and to expertise, it captivates a person. So he's saying that even this mode of clarity can cause us to become attached to the happiness that it brings. He goes on to say that know that the impulsive influence, the rajas, is characterized by passion. It is produced from earnest desire and attachment. This mode captivates the embodied soul by an attachment to activity. So the problem with each of them is unique to each. He said that the problem with sattva is the attachment to happiness. Now he's saying that the problem with rajas is the attachment to activity. He says in verse 8 now, but know that the depressing mode is produced of insensibility, which is the confusion of all embodied beings. This captivates by inattentiveness, laziness, and sleep. The clarifying influence causes attachment to happiness. The impulsive one causes a need for action, but the depressing mode obscures experience and causes attachment to negligence. When predominating over impulsiveness and depression, clarity emerges. Depression rises, predominating over impulsiveness and clarity. Similarly, impulsion takes control over depression and clarity. And Michael Beloved, in this commentary on this particular verse, verse 10, says, each of the modes serves as a part of a threefold power, but on occasion, a part may not be operative. All the parts form the aggregate total being, which consists of a physical, subtle, and causal body, or a subtle and causal one, or just a causal one alone, depending on what dimension you're in. In any case, the being has all three modes within it. Any of the energies can expand and dominate the psyche. Material nature cannot be controlled absolutely by any limited being. It is simply impossible. But if we understand how the energy works, we can decrease its leverage. That is the most we can do. If one fails to observe the working of the modes of nature, he loses his status as Prabhu, or director of the body. So, verses 5 through 11 in the Bhagavad Gita are important to study in regard to our understanding of the gunas. So it's so important that we try to identify these modes within ourselves and know ourselves so well that we can recognize, oh, I'm in a rajasic mood. I'm feeling very nervous or very excitable or very prone toward action and completion of things. It's a good thing. It's also good when we recognize the tamasic energies within us, when we can say, oh, I've got to slow down, I'm feeling lethargic, I'm feeling heavy, I need to fast, I need to sleep, I need to rest. The tamasic energy within us is necessary. It puts us to sleep at night. It rests our body. And then the rajas gets us up in the morning and activates our body. This is not under our control as the observing self. But as Krishna points out, it captivates the observing self. And we become so identified with these moods, this triangular pendulum of mood changes and fluctuations. And for some of us, it's very quick. This fluctuation can happen multiple times in an hour. For some of us, the process takes longer. Some of the people that are amped up all the time. These people have a dominant rajas. They are very rajasic. You also know someone who's very lethargic or maybe suffers from depression, like clinical depression. This person's tamasic element is predominant. And sometimes it stays that way. And that's when we end up with these psychiatric diagnoses. The problem is that they try to treat it with psychiatric drugs, and that often can exacerbate problems, as we all know. So information is power, and knowledge of these parts of ourselves is very, very powerful and gives us an upper hand so that we can recognize when one of these gets out of control, because they can and will get out of control within most of us at certain points in our lives. So I'd like to do a meditation with you now to help us identify and recognize these gunas within the psyche that we live in. For our meditation on the gunas, I would like for you to find a comfortable place to sit and just close your eyes and relax your facial muscles, relax your scalp and your jaw and your throat, your ears, the inner ears. Go down through the body and lengthen the spine a little bit and relax the belly, the hips, the legs. Make sure you're really comfortable. Adjust as needed. Don't sacrifice your comfort. Take the time to get into the correct position. And turn your attention within yourself. You're going in there to try and sense out these modes, these gunas, because they're all present within you. The potential is there for each of them to be dominant. The potential is there for each of them to be felt by you right now. So let us start with the mode of passion. Eyes closed, deep breath in. Exhale through the mouth. Let your brain relax. No thoughts. Deep breath in and out. Remember what it felt like when you were excited about something, or nervous about something, or something that overjoyed you. Remember that feeling? That's the mode of passion. that surge of happy hormone into your system. And we're not going deep into those memories or anything. We're just touching upon the emotion attached to them. So let's move to the other end of the spectrum, into the mode of depression. And I want you to think about when you have felt sadness or fatigue, hopelessness, pointlessness, lethargy, stagnancy, slow-minded, foggy. That's the mode of depression. Its potential is always in there. It's part of the nature of the matrix we live in. And now we move to the mode of clarity. And I want you to think of a feeling of inner peace and balance, clear-mindedness, quiet-mindedness. Think of a time you felt relaxed, steady, stable, no anxiety, no nerves, no emotion. Clarity. Feel those potentials. Your nature is comprised of those potentials. They are the puppeteers of your life. The very mood rooms, the environments you enter into an environment in your psyche when these moods take over. They are repetitive rooms that the self gets pulled into time and time again, and somehow has to bear the burden of the resultant debt acquired through those actions. That's called karma. For a person truly interested in yoga, transcendence, incarnation in a higher dimension, this kind of repetitive entering into these mood environments has to stop. Keep the eyes closed. Take another deep breath in and out through the mouth. Keep the brain relaxed. As the observing self in the center of the head, we take this inventory of what is inside this psyche, what surrounds us, enfolds us, protects us, and destroys us. We categorize it. We get it together and get things in order. So maybe we too can get to the place Lord Krishna called the supreme perfection. Jai Shri Krishna. As you are ready, we will emerge from our meditation with a deep breath. And opening our eyes, we understand ourselves a little bit more as we've gone in, taken a little bit of inventory into what really constitutes the psyche, what this mental house that we live in is comprised of. We know ourselves a little better each and every time we can objectively identify these modes of nature. It's not a bipolar situation. It's a tripolar situation. So if you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to say about the GUNAS or the Bhagavad Gita, I'd appreciate it. And you can share in the comments if you'd like. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel. Take care.